All right, so welcome to today's broadcast. My name is Scott Engler. I am a published author, thought leader, and coach on career transition, contemporary job search strategies, really transitioning from whatever it is you're doing and more into a role that aligns with where you want to be and what you want to be doing. So today's topic is the top 5 challenges I've found now for years of having worked with, spoken with, collaborated with other people who work with executives or C-level roles. And, these individuals that are generally looking to transition from their current company or their current industry. So, and these answers, before I get into it, this is not only from having worked at Lee Hecht Harrison, was my first role as a career transition consultant, and working with Amgen, which was at the time one of the world's largest biotech companies. I'm not quite sure if they are anymore, and also now consulting for Recruiter.com and collaborating with their staff on what the top challenges are for these types of roles and looking to transition. On top of which, just for me personally, speaking and working with these people for hundreds and hundreds of hours and listening to a lot of the same stories over and over again. So let's go over them. The first one that I hear all the time is essentially they're getting opportunities. So they're getting phone interviews or in-person interviews. They're just really not feeling like they're attracting the right opportunities for them. And often I'll hear, this could sound a ton of different ways. They might even have 3 pending job offers or be in the interview process, right? Because when you're going for a higher level, a lot of times it's even a lengthier process than, more of an entry level or, non-executive role. And when they're honest with me and themselves, they're not thrilled about the position. And when we dig a little deeper, we find out there's always some limiting belief there. So sometimes it could be, the one I hear all the time is the age thing. Usually people that are at a C-level role or executive have been in the workforce for quite some time, so they're feeling insecure about their age. A lot of times it could be that they have been told recently they're overqualified for positions that they're interviewing for, or they're just not finding places that will actually pay them what they're worth. So there's this ingrained feeling that there's really just not any opportunities out there for them that will really, align with what they want to do, and also on top of that, compensate them the way that they deserve to be. So that's a huge one. That might be the top 2, right, out of the 5. The second one is a little surprising, but it's so common. Actually, when I talked to the director of client services at Recruiter, she said this was one of the biggest ones she found, and I found it to be very common as well, is that people are afraid that they're going to get caught looking for outside work when they're at their job, and therefore they don't really put in the same effort, or they don't necessarily know how to navigate what to do to look for work without this fear that somehow they're going to get found out. So I'm happy to say, knock on wood, that I've had this situation and this fear or challenge come up a lot over the years, and I've never had anyone get caught. Especially, I primarily help people optimize their LinkedIn to attract the right opportunities, because that's where over 90% of recruiters are. And so there's really just an art form to do that without, appearing that you're looking for another job, but still attracting opportunities. And savvy recruiters know that typically speaking, the passive candidates are usually the highest quality, and this isn't always the case, obviously, but just know that they know what the deal is, and that statistics are continuing to show that even though not everyone is an active job seeker, the percentage of people that are passive and are open to new opportunities and might be, looking at posts here and there and kind of, checking out other companies they might want to work for is much, much higher. So that being said, don't worry. I think it really is something that people might need help with because they get so stuck in believing that they're going to get caught by saying that, something. And there's always just these limiting beliefs. And, when I'm working with clients, once we kind of go over a few things and I show them what that's going to look like on their profile, I've never had someone that's still like freaking out. And, like I've said in an article I wrote, even if for some reason you did get found out, it's like, hey, maybe that's a blessing in disguise, or maybe that's an opportunity to speak to your boss about it. And another good thing on that subject, and then I'll get off this one, is Job Seeker Premium recently has offered this option where you could have, I believe, like your first name and last initial on Job Seeker Premium. And so, that kind of protects your identity a little bit. But even then, it's like, if your boss is looking for investors are on Job Seeker Premium and they're that suspicious, because that's a private group anyway, then there's probably something going on anyway and you need to get out of there, right? The third one is for a higher level role, there's obviously a lot more competition and fewer open positions, right? For higher level roles, there's not as many of them. And the competition is fierce, right? The people I speak to all the time on recruiter.com have accomplished amazing things. I mean, I love hearing their stories. They're super talented. And, that's when you get to that kind of tier or level position, that's what you get more of, right? Is very high quality, high caliber people. So the competition gets rougher. Now, the other challenge with that is that most people that are in executive C-level positions haven't had to look for work for, a decade, 2 decades, maybe 3 decades. So they're not familiar with navigating the contemporary job search and the way it works. A lot of them are still stuck on spending all their time and energy on resumes when that is warranting roughly a 2% response rate in the industry. So they're spending all their time in the wrong ways, especially if they are currently working, which is the client I typically work with, is that they don't have that much free time to begin with. So even the free time that they're spending is not being put in an optimal way. So one of the biggest things that I've found consistently is I'll take someone that's spending anywhere between 10 to 15 hours on top of their full-time job looking for work, and I'll get them down to 3, but I'll use an approach that's so geared towards what actually works and their strengths that they get better results and better offers in like 3 hours, sometimes 2 hours, right? And so it's just about working smarter, job searching smarter, not harder. And I guess the other factor that goes along with this is a lot of them aren't used to doing some of maybe that more admin stuff on their own. They might have assistants or secretaries, so then it gets really challenging to navigate that for them. It's just a humbling process for most of us, and especially I think if they're used to having other people handle some of those more mundane tasks and feeling like they have to prove themselves again, that's a big thing. And just kind of not understanding what's working for professional branding now and how that's changed. The terminology that works is much different now. Like I say, most people, especially like when I was working with the Amgen clients, their terminology that they used for for what they did best sounded like a cardiologist report. And the same goes, now I live in Corvallis, where the headquarters of Hewlett-Packard is. Same thing. I talk to people all the time that used to work at Hewlett-Packard or just stopped working there. And it's the same thing when I'm looking over their resume and just kind of speaking to them that they're just not really familiar with how to brand themselves. It's been so long, and they're using old school approaches that don't work anymore. The fourth one is that they're either burnout at their industry or they have hit the ceiling at their current role. So again, these are a little bit different, but I wanted to clump them together because it's this feeling, it's the same kind of feeling when I talk to them, the same kind of challenge where they just feel stuck at their current role. Let's say they've been in manufacturing for the last 25 years. So, and they're like VP of sales or something. Let's just say they're VP of sales at manufacturing. They just don't know how to transition to a different industry, but they know they're just over the industry that they're in. Sometimes it's more the company they're over, but oftentimes they're just kind of ready to do a different industry, but the same role. And that is very challenging because most of us, I'd say like 98% of us, weren't brought up in a culture or environment, especially not their current company, where they're taught to think in those kind of terms and outside the box of how their skills, either soft skills or core competencies, can be transitioned over to a different industry. I've been able to do that myself, so I teach my clients to do the same. Really, it's kind of this amazing process I love to take people through where there is an uncovering process, and it doesn't happen in 20 minutes, but often it happens within the first few weeks. It's like the floodgates open, something clicks, and they just get it all of a sudden. And then, they're able to transition and see how their skill sets could really transition to that different industry. Being burnt out or not being able to progress at their role, that's another big one. They're just, they've hit the ceiling. A lot of times it's just, this is leading into number 5 too, is like they're working for an organization that is no longer working for them. So perfect example, again, I'll go back to Hewlett-Packard. I speak to people in town all the time that have worked at Hewlett-Packard and no longer work there. And I love listening to people's stories, right? I love learning from, maybe what was going on in their mind, what was going on with the company, why they feel like things went downhill. And without a doubt, every single one of them has just kind of said how the organization at one point was a great place to work. They were thriving. They loved working for HP. And then at some point, a lot of them said a big one was kind of when the ink cartridge or printing wasn't as big of a commodity, was like the company still had these same expectations or standards, and then they started downsizing and they started hiring the wrong people for these roles to kind of like pick back up. And anyway, so all these shifts, right, and this is what I hear in tons of different companies too. So all these types of changes and shifts made the place that was at one point a really great place to work no longer a great place to work. And then what happens is a lot of times, because we're human beings and we have this sense of job security, especially for the baby boomer generation, right? They grew up in a different time than exists now, where they very likely worked really, really hard, went to really amazing schools, and were living in a generation where most people would stay at the same company for their entire career. So there's kind of that mindset thing going on, right? Is like they're comfortable there, they've been there for so long, they were told and have experienced either from their parents or other of their peers or friends or spouses that it's supposed to be that you work this great job for the rest of your life, especially if you're working for like a reputable company like a Amgen or HP. So a lot of times they'll stay on at this role or with the company for much, much longer until they either like get laid off or it's just so painful that they eventually transition out of it. So those are the top 5 challenges I found. If you could relate to these and you're currently looking to transition and you really want to apply smarter strategies to get you to really navigate new waters, my name is Scott Engler. You can find me on LinkedIn, or you could shoot me an email if you're getting this newsletter, buildingyourownbrand@gmail.com. We could set up a time. I have a newer career transition assessment I've made. It's like a more of a needs assessment, and it takes about 5 minutes to complete. It might help you get a better idea of what your biggest challenges are and how I can help you do that and navigate through them and find your next best role. So thank you again, and take care.